Hello and welcome back, everybody. I'm RJ Kerr, and this is our ongoing live stream, Let's Write an Adventure, where we're creating a D&D adventure in real time so that you can see all the steps and thoughts that go into the process, you know, warts included, all that kind of deal. So we have been working on a adventure that we started. Ooh, well, this is what, week 28 of this series. Wow, we've really taken our time with this, haven't we? We've done a lot. Um, but this this adventure is pretty much coming up on its conclusion. In fact, the last time we did this, that we worked on this series about 2 weeks ago, I had effectively declared that this adventure was finished, minus a title. Which, hell or high water, we're coming up with a title for this thing today. It needs one. But I also, having kind of put the pin in it and declared it done, had one of those nights where I woke up in the middle of it and realized there is one thing that I had forgotten to include in this, and something I want to backtrack and make sure that we work into this adventure, and that is random encounters. Now, there are a lot of ways to approach things like random encounters when you are building your adventures. The first and easiest one is to not do them at all. There's a lot of folks who would say that if it doesn't move the story forward, it doesn't have a place in your adventure. And that's not necessarily wrong. It's also not necessarily right. It really just depends on how you want to run your adventures. I personally think that there is a place for some randomness in tabletop role playing games. We use dice after all for all sorts of things. Um, the but the idea of random encounters sort of diluting the narrative, that really kind of comes to us from literary fiction, in a lot of ways. In that, when you're trying to tell a very tight story where, you know, plot point A happens, and then B, and then C, and things progress in a very linear, although not necessarily railroady kind of way. Yeah, random encounters, they dilute, they add a little bit of chaos in there, that pulls the characters out of their active pursuit and off of the course to their objective, and it becomes a less, cinematic, less narrative sort of structure, which some GMs don't like. Others, however, don't mind that. So there are two other approaches then when it comes to addressing the idea of random encounters, and that the first, the I should say the second one, since the first one was don't do them. The second one is to essentially overpopulate your dungeon environment a little bit and have action groups where you've got denizens of your dungeon, or your environment, or wherever your characters are exploring, your wilderness, what have you, and essentially move them in groups in, a random-ish or maybe even a pre-planned route around the environment, going about their normal chores and their normal activities. And that's a really good approach when you don't like to get into the idea of sort of quantum, um, well, not quantum inventory, but like a quantum number of baddies, right? When you want to know that there are specifically, 20 bad guys at the bandit fort, whatever. And that way you can put them all in there, and then you can move them around, and make it feel very natural, and it can give your players a cool little thing where there is a limited number of baddies they have to get through. And so if they really think strategically, they could deplete that number, sort of edge away at it and handle a much larger force, one force that they wouldn't normally be able to handle by itself outright, by taking out one or two of the baddies at a time. And so that can be a really cool way to do that. It requires a little more management that way, but it can open a lot of really interesting doors for you, and one that I would encourage you to try in other adventures. The third and final way is to do random encounters the way that most of us think about random encounters, and that's make a table and populate it with groups of NPCs and things that can be found that the characters can randomly come across. And I think there's a lot to be said for that method. If you don't mind some of the flexibility of, one time you play through this site, it may have X number of creatures, and the next time you come through this area, it might have Y number of creatures, um, then I think that it adds just a little bit of chaos to otherwise a very orderly event. And I don't mean chaos in the way that it disrupts the adventure or story or the way that you're telling it, but I mean more in the way that it can toss in some very cool kernels of kernels for ideas to form from, things that wouldn't have been in there otherwise, that can spark ideas at the table and make for some very cool emergent storytelling. So the bottom line is there's no right, wrong, way to do this. There are just methods, and you're going to want to pick the one that works best for you. For this particular adventure, I think that we're going to go with option number 3. We're going to create a classic, um, yeah, a classic random encounter table and build from there. Cool. So let's go ahead and dive into that. And I think we're going to spend a good chunk of today working on this. If we have time left at the end, we'll brainstorm a little bit about about the next adventure that we're gonna work on, because we certainly want to work on something different than what we've been doing for this. This has been a very cool and interesting adventure. I think. I think it's been a lot of fun to create it, but we're gonna want to shift gears and try something new. That's how we grow as creators and as artists. And if you are creating dungeons, you are an artist. I don't care what anybody says. All right, so let's start off by creating a table. Now, the first thing that I will do is I'll figure out what number, what die I'm going to use for this. You can make really big tables if you'd like. You can go all the way through, D100s if you really want to do it. I personally, if it's a wilderness, yeah, I'll usually do a larger table. For a dungeon environment, I'll usually go around 6 or 8. So why don't we start with 6? So an 1d6, and we can give ourselves the option of upgrading in the future if or upgrading to a 1d8 if we just come up with too many good ideas. So let's just go ahead and create that out. 4, 5, 6. Wonderful. And I really do like to have the whole header row thing here. I think it just makes it look a little bit cleaner. I'm going to say encounter. And I don't want. There we go. I want to expand it that way, not add extra cells. And we don't need a whole lot of that space there. That can go there. Okay. So making a random encounter list table is, in my mind, it is not an exercise in just coming up with 6 groups of baddies that the characters can fight, right? Because the idea here is that if they're all combat encounters, if they are all moments when the characters must fight something, then they don't add any creativity. They don't add any spark to what you're doing, which means that, yeah, they kind of don't have any value at that point, other than to just kind of wear down your characters. And if you're running a meat grinder sort of adventure, well, okay, maybe that's what you want to do. But for something like this, I think that it's much better to have a blend of NPCs, hazards, and also boons. I really like to put 1 or 2 things that the characters might stumble across that are kind of cool for them in addition to things they might stumble across that are perhaps dangerous and threatening to them, because it really kind of helps balance this out and makes something that is, well, more exciting, more entertaining. If there's a risk, if you have a risk of a bane of being in a precarious situation or hostile encounter, well, why shouldn't you have the potential to find something really neat? That is, after all, why characters adventure. And so I will frequently put my favorite, the hidden cache, in here. And the hidden cache is it's whatever it needs to be. It is the characters are walking through an area, when they're spending a time in an area and you roll for a random encounter, well, they trip over a loose stone, or they just happen to notice a hollow in the tree, or something shimmering, melt, sort of packed in the ice of the walls of the berg, or something along those lines, right? This is, um, this is something that because we rolled this as an encounter, they kind of auto find it, um, and it has just a little bit of treasure in it, and we'll make another random table for that. But hidden cache is one that I like to put in there, and it's even fine when your characters are taking a long rest and you roll for it, because maybe they didn't find it right away. Maybe somebody finds it in the middle of the night. They get up to pee or whatever, and they trip over it in the dark, or they put their hand on a tree and realize that, oh, there's a hollow in there. Oh, there's something in there. That kind of thing. Um, so we'll fill that one out with a table in a second here. So let's go ahead and create that table so we don't forget. And we'll just do a 1d4 for this, again, just in case. We can always expand it if we come up with cooler ideas. 3, 4. Cool. And then we'll say cache contents. Hidden cache contents. Okay. Great. So we'll pop that in a second once we fill that out. So to that end, we should also have an encounter in here that is, almost 100% assuredly going to become a hostile encounter. Since this is a place that's full of the undead, both the wastes that surround the berg and the berg itself, I think we should go with undead. I think that makes this really simple. So let's see. Skeletons. Let's see. I got D&D Beyond open on my other screen here. And I'm just looking up potential potential threats. Now, if you check Xanathar's, you'll see that since we're doing third level characters, a group of third level characters, a 1-to-1 is a 12, a 2-to-1, or I should say a 1-to-2, one character to two baddies is a CR 1/4, or with that 1/4. And so I kind of like doing, for random encounters, making them anywhere from easy to medium difficulty. I don't usually want them to be much harder than that, because we already have encounters that hit harder than that. So we don't necessarily need that. So I think it's fun to do the 1-to-2 ratio. So hitting up those skeletons, which means that for 4, that means up to 8 of them for a medium difficulty encounter. And so why don't we say 1d6 plus 2 skeletons. Tens. And we'll actually go and we'll say hostile skeletons. just to ensure that that one is a combat encounter. And then the rest of this, we can have things that are a little more variable. In fact, what we might want to do for this is there's a cool mechanic in Shadow Dark that I really like for random encounters, and that's the attitudes roll table, where there is um, there's a list of potential attitudes, and you roll every time you have a random encounter. You roll on that. It determines whether the creature is going to be hostile or whether they're going to be suspicious or curious or indifferent or friendly or what have you. And in Shadow Dark, you add your charisma modifier to that. I don't want to do that for D&D because we have skill checks for that kind of thing, persuasion and deception and what have you. And we have mechanics for how to roll with, friendly or hostile or indifferent creatures. So, but I still like the idea of a table that gives us a mechanical way to determine a random encounter's disposition. So let's create one of those. So let's say table. And we'll say 1d6 for this. Kind of what I have in mind. And we'll say disposition. And won't need to be that big, but why not? All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And we'll say 1 to 2 hostile. Well, let's do this. Let's say 1, and let's say hostile aggressive. And then 2, we'll say hostile threatening. Because a creature can be hostile without being violent. They can just be mean, right? Hostile doesn't mean that there's necessarily going to have to be a fight, but it certainly ratchets up the odds of it. And so in this case, we have one where aggressive is, that's a fight. Hostile threatening means we're a hair's breadth from a fight, but maybe they could diffuse it. Maybe the characters could diffuse it with some good role play or some high dice rolls. And we'll say 6, and we'll say friendly, helpful. And then for the rest of this, we will say 3, 4, 5. We'll say different, suspicious, and didn't spell that right, of course, and indifferent, cautious, say, and different, curious. And you might be asking yourself, how can they be indifferent, cautious, indifferent, curious? Aren't those values? If you're curious about something, you clearly aren't indifferent to it, right? Well, we're talking in terms of we're using hostile, indifferent, and friendly with their mechanical definitions, which they always had mechanical definitions, even in the 2014 rules, but they've since been clarified and streamlined in the 2024 rules, meaning that when you're making social encounter checks with a hostile NPC, you do so with disadvantage. When you're making social encounter checks with a friendly NPC, you do so with advantage. And when it's indifferent, well, it's just a straight check. And so in this case, we've created a spread of potential dispositions where the majority of this are going to be straight checks, but there is the possibility of a high roll for advantage or low rolls offering disadvantage, with only one that's a guaranteed. We're going to have to fight now. And so the less the more wiggle room you give yourselves in these various dispositions, the more room you give your characters for creative solutions to any kind of random encounter, which frankly allows for better emergent storytelling and helps build those creative moments that I really think are a hallmark of a good random encounters table. Okay, so with that being said, let's actually move that up top, uh, because that would be our order of operations, right? And let's roll then. Actually, I guess you would roll disposition after. So we'll go there, since that's our order of operations. Um, and let's start populating this. What else would we find inside inside the Berg and out in the wilds potentially? Although I'm really kind of picturing this for the Berg predominantly. Um, you know, Realistically, if we wanted to do random encounters out in the wilds, well, then we would do a different table for that, I think. And maybe we'll spend some time doing that as well. I keep going back and forth on whether or not we need it, um, but we might. So let's make this Berg encounters. Okay, and that should be table. No, tables. I don't know why that kept trying to type in there. All right, cool. Okay, so other undead. Well, ghouls are a definite possibility. We want to keep these encounters somewhat light, but we know there are ghouls that are roaming around. And so let's double check what their challenge rating is. It's a 1, which means it's a 2 to 1. Okay, so we would be looking at maybe 1 to 2 ghouls. And I'm always tempted with undead to say, well, they're always hostile. But then you think about things like, curious ghosts and undead that have unfinished business and that want something. And well, maybe they're not. And ghouls are more animalistic than other undead, which means they can have animal-like behaviors, I think. At least the way that I envision them. I know in some of the kind of the Lovecraftian versions of ghouls, they're you know, they're a little more sentient. But I like my ghouls like Anita Blake Vampire Slayer ghouls, as kind of these pack animals. Um, and so, yeah, they might be more likely to be aggressive, um, but they might be something else. And in fact, we might say something to the effect of, that's still bold. Let's see. Um, Roll with disadvantage on disposition table. So, giving ourselves a note that we're going to roll with disadvantage on the disposition table, meaning that there's a higher likelihood that we're going to get a hostile result with the ghouls, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe they're full. Maybe it's been a long time since they've run into the living and they're not hungry at the moment. Maybe they're curious about why the creatures, the characters are there. The way that wolves might be curious, or a wild cat might be curious. All right, let's see. Let's come up with some other ideas. What else? What else? What else? What else would be in the Berg? Let's try to veer away from undead for the moment. Let's see if we can think of other things that the characters might encounter in there. Well, ooh, what about oozes? I think with all that cold in there, I think about dripping water and it's a font of magic. Maybe there's some oozes that they might encounter. Let's see what Let's see what pops up. Let's see what strikes our fancy. And I'm just filtering for oozes in the um, the monster search engine on D&D Beyond. And I think I'm going to limit myself a little bit on the sources. We're going to say basic rules, updated free rules, and we'll say monster manual for the moment. Maybe we'll add some more. We'll see what else is in there. But that gives us uh, that gives us black pudding, gelatinous cube, gray ooze, ochre jelly, and the thing that made me uh, go ooh, and that is the psychic gray ooze. That feels like such a cool thing, I think, for a place that is so suffuse with magic. Um, Especially because it corrodes metal, and this is a metal mine. I could see that seeping through the veins of ore uh, deep at the base of the berg. Okay, yeah, and that's a 1/4. I mean, a 1/2. So that's going to be a 1 to 1. All right, all right. So we'll say 1d4 psychic ooze. And again, not necessarily aggressive, but could you imagine how creepy a psychic gray ooze? How creepy being, sort of approached by a psychic gray ooze that's curious about you. And you know what? We can make them even creepier. We can say with telepathy. And we'll say 60-foot range. They've got a 6 intelligence, right? So they're not smart, but can you imagine just this dumb, curious, maybe suspicious ooze that's been trying to probe your mind, talking to you, and it's sort of languorous internal monologue as you're creeping through the dark in one of these one of the passages of the berg. Yeah, that would be creepy. I like that. Okay, so an ooze. What else? Let's maybe think about things that maybe would be found in the Underdark. Let's try that because we do have that mine layer here, right? And so Underdark is kind of the byword um, for underground and the search stuff here. So let's look at that. Let's give ourselves some brackets here. So we'll say we want anywhere from 1/8 to probably 1/2 in our challenge ratings. Filter those. Get rid of things like the aboleth. We don't need one of those for this. Dark Mantle. Ooh, we could do Dark Mantles. I could see frost versions of Dark Mantles. Yeah, it seemed like icicles, right? Kind of forming on the roof of some of these rooms. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, so they're another 1/2, so let's do another 1d4. We can say dark mantles. That's one word. And let's see, dark mantle. see here. We'll say false appearance makes them indistinguishable from ice formations such as icicles. And I misspelled that. There we go. Icicles. Cool. And I think we're coming up with some cool ideas, so we're going to add a couple more here. We're going to go to 8. I think I should have known. I should have known that I'd never be able to limit myself to just 6. Silly, silly me. Okay. All right. Now let's see what else we might find. I want something that's a little more intelligent, something that could be bargained or bartered with. And something that could become an ally if handled properly, potentially. Let's see here. What have we got? Magma Mephit is the only one. Let's remove the Underdark and let's try Mephit, because Ice Mephits sound like they would stand out to me. That could be interesting. Little elementals that have formed here. That's something that makes sense to me. So let's add them in there. And they're another 1/2. So 1d4 Ice Mephits. And they don't require any additional little bit there. And there's something that could be easily turned into an ally, potentially. Okay. Now let's put that Underdark tag back on and see what else. Oh, let's put the Arctic tag on there too. Okay. Let's see. What other kinds of things kind of stand out to me that might be in there? We're looking for at least 2 more things. Let's see. What might be growing in there? Rust Monster could be cool. Yeah. Again, to the mines, I think. Again, I like the idea of the corrosive element there. Let's toss that on there. Let's see, 1d4 Rust Monsters. And let's I'm kind of tempted to put other adventurers in here. Maybe maybe we create a little band of NPC adventurers who have come looking for treasure. A random group that they could run into. Let's see. Let's do that. Let's say a band of adventurers exploring the Berg for loot. And we'll say that they're made up of, let's say, let's say a scout, an orc. What else? We'll say 2 scouts, an orc, and a hobgoblin. How's that sound? say 2 scouts, 1 orc, and 1 hobgoblin. Which, I mean, if we put those on here, we've created a group, a specific band that can pop up again and again, and they might be aggressive, they might be helpful, they might want to team up with the adventurers, and all of that can change. And they might even team up, and if they do, well, then when we roll an 8 again, well, then we just ignore it or we roll again. We might have some folks that become an ally here, but we've also given them an objective that can put them at odds with the characters, with the player characters, because they want the loot for themselves. Perhaps they don't want to share at all. So yes, we got I think, a nice little list here for that we can roll while we're exploring the burg. And I mean, I would roll, every 30 minutes or so, what have you. Maybe 30 minutes in game time, or 30 minutes of real life time, just depending on the situation. And we've got skeletons, we got ghouls, we got oozes, we got dark mantles, ice mephits, rust monsters. Yeah, I think a good little blend here for our adventure. Now, let's kind of go ahead and focus on populating that hidden cache. So, this is where we're thinking about, treasure and boons. So there's a third level characters. Let's say one cache can have 1d4 plus 1 potions of healing. Give them that little boost in there. We could have one that is, let's see, 2d10 GP. We'll say 2d10. No, that's too much. That's too much. Let's say 1d6 times 10 GP worth of gemstones. Okay. We'll say 1. Let's see, spell scroll. Scroll. And we'll say first level for that. And what if let's see, actually, let's just say 1d4 potions of healing. We don't need the +1. And let's make this a 6, and let's say that that's 1 to 2, and we'll say 3 to 4. Make that 4, and then you know what we'll do? We'll make that 4 to 5. No, let's make that 4. Let's make that 4, and then we'll say 5 and 6, and that way we can put some stuff in here that might be a little bit on the higher value end here. So let's see what other kinds of potions we might find, or what other magic items. Let's see here. We might want to put in here, because it is fun to kind of sometimes run across magic items. So let's say Yeah, so we'll say 1 potion of healing greater. Yeah, that could be nice. Those don't often get put in there. And then we'll say, oh, how about 1 potion of resistance cold? Makes sense. We are in an iceberg or a glacier, after all. Um, great. Great, great, great. Excellent. Okay, so we have got random encounters for the Berg all set up. Um, that's easy. Um, and let's, let's say, because we got a little bit of time left. Let's do some random encounters for the wilderness on the way here. So let's see, 1 potion of resistance for cold, or we'll say potion of resistance, we'll say fire. And that's so that we can use this hidden cache list for the wilderness as well, the wasteland. So let's add another table here. And we're going to say 1d6 because we're going to try to keep this one streamlined again. We're going to say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this is going to be our wasteland encounters. So on the way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And that'll go there. Gives the header row. Okay, so hidden cache as well. The skeletons are obvious because they exist in both. And then let's come up with some other options. So let's search desert and see what we come up with. Let's do tribal warriors. They're a 1d8. So we could do, gosh, up to 20 of them because they're a 1-to-5 ratio. So, yeah, that's, let's say, we're going to say 1d6 times 3. That's a lot of them, potentially, up to 18. But since it doesn't have to be a combat encounter, it could be a small, small traveling warband or something like that. Say tribal warriors. That they come across. Okay. And let's see what else. What other things kind of seem like interesting? Ooh, gnolls. I love gnolls. And jackalware. Ooh, let's definitely put some jackalware in there. Because they are tricky, especially because they are immune to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't silvered. So they might be extra kind of beefy and dangerous. They might be something that has to be avoided or escaped, but they definitely feel like a cool wasteland encounter to me. So let's keep their numbers low. Well, we're going to have to anyway. It's going to be a 1d4 at the most. And again, they might not be aggressive, jackalware. So there can be other solutions than fighting them. Let's see. Knolls. Knolls sound interesting to me as well. So we might put those in there. Let's see. Yeah, gnolls and maybe winged kobolds. Yeah. Maybe not winged kobolds. Gnolls, we'll definitely put gnolls in there. There. Yeah, gnolls. Okay, so 1d4 gnolls. And I know that in the traditional lore, gnolls are hyper aggressive, ever hungry, always, kill and eat the living, but you don't have to always run with traditional lore, right? You can always make them a little bit different, have them set apart in some way. So we could also have a pack of giant lizards. That could be fun. Let's do that. We'll do another 1d6 plus 2 giant lizards. Yeah, put some actual animals out there. And I think that for what we're looking for, that is enough. Very cool. All right. So we've got our... oh, I'm sorry, chat. I had the other screen open. I just saw what you're may ask what the setting is for this adventure. Carrion crawlers or something, some type of worm. Yeah, absolutely. So the setting here is kind of open-ended, where we've got this is designed to kind of fit into whatever your setting is. We're doing the waste. We're doing the sort of the wilderness bit here in kind of a wasteland environment, and so I like the idea of a carrion crawler or some kind of worm. But this is for 4 third level adventurers, and so I just don't. I don't want to make it too unbalanced. That being said, there's nothing wrong if you're doing a sandbox world with tossing some encounters in there that are just kind of outclassed. Like, tossing in a purple worm, right, is way overpowered compared to the level of our characters. But as long as you give them a way to escape, well, then that can make then that can still make for a very cool encounter. And so, you know what? I like it. Let's do it. I'm changing my mind. Let's do it. Let's toss in that purple worm in here. So let's just kind of see what. Let's see here. Purple worm. Yeah, purple worm. CR15. Yeah, all right, we're going to do it. Which means we need to change this to a 1d8. Actually, yeah, we got to change it to a 1d8. And let's put that there, and let's adjust these. Let's say, because we do want to play with some of the statistical probabilities. We don't want it to be purple worm. Let's see, purple worm. 1 purple worm. And we'll say let's see here. Roll. We got to give a mechanic. You know what? We don't have to. We can figure it out in the time being. You want some way for the characters to escape because they cannot handle a CR-15 purple worm, right? And what you absolutely don't want, what does not feel good to anyone, is a TPK off of a random encounter. That makes no one happy. Um, yeah, so we want to make sure that there is the opportunity for our characters to escape if they encounter a purple worm. And so um, we might say something like appears at a distance moving toward the PCs. So maybe give them just some room to maneuver, to maybe get out of the way, to hide, something along those lines. Um, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, a purple worm's passive perception is a 9, right? So it is something that they can avoid, they can hide from. Cool. I love it. Thanks, Milan. I appreciate that. Um, all right. Excellent. Well, we are getting to the end of our time here, and we really have rounded out this adventure, which means there's just one thing to do. We need a name. Anybody who's in the chat here, if you've got ideas for a name for our adventure, toss them in. I'd love to hear them because right now I'm coming up with things like Cold Iron Conundrum. Let's see. Um, the Hags of Sky Song Gulch. We could have. Um, hmm. Hmm. None of those seem to fit, do they, though? We need something that kind of captures this adventure. The Bloodgood Sisters, with um, the the adventure through the wastelands, through sort of the icy environment of the Berg. We could say um, hmm hmm that Cold Iron Conundrum um, is the best that I'm coming up with at the moment. Let's start with that. Let's see what else we can do. Say Cold Iron Conundrum, which of course I put too many N's in. But that doesn't quite fit. We could say I think maybe the Hags of Sky Song Gulch. The Hagza. We could say ooh. Desert Ice. The Desert Ice of Sky Song Gulch. That's, I think, the best I've come up with. Again, let me know in the chat, in the comments, if you've got some better ideas for the name. I would love to hear them. And while you're at it, we've got to come up with something for our next adventure, the one that we're going to start writing next week. So, what's it going to be about? What are you all interested in? What are you guys interested in working on? We could do a mystery. We could do something in the vein of horror. We could do something that's more like a spy thriller or an intrigue. We could do just about anything. So, and your ideas don't have to be genre based, right? You know, if you have a particular monster you'd like to see me work with, and make the focus of an adventure. If you have a plot idea that you want to toss out there and see what we can build together with it, please do. I would love to hear all of those ideas, and I will check in on them at the yeah at the before we jump into our session next week. So please pour them in. So thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon so that you never miss a video. And if you enjoy my content, you can check out more of it on at rjkerr.com. But you can also join one of my tables at startplaying.games/gm/rjkerr. I would absolutely love to get to play D&D with you all. In fact, I am starting a brand new Saltmarsh and Tales from the Yawning Portal sort of mashup campaign that runs Monday evenings Central Time. So check that one out. I would love to meet all of you and get to play some actual D&D with y'all. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time.